Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Analyzing Evil. This time, we're diving deep into the story many of you have been asking for in the comments. The emotional chaos and the downfall of Angela Deem from 90 Day Fiancé, from her troubled past and broken trust to her unraveling control over Michael. This analysis was requested by you, the viewers, and I appreciate all your engagement, insights, and suggestions. Angela's story isn't just one of reality TV drama, it's a mirror reflecting the dark consequences of unresolved trauma, unchecked ego, and the need to dominate those who claim to love. So, because we're going to unpack every layer of manipulation, mistrust, and emotional collapse, don't forget to leave any additional characters you'd like me to cover in the comments below. But to understand how Angela became who she is, we need to go back before the cameras, before the chaos. Angela Deem was born in Georgia, USA, and spent most of her life rooted in small town of Southern culture. Before joining the cast of 90 Day Fiancé, Angela worked as a nursing assistant and lived with her mother, children, and grandchildren. Her life wasn't glamorous, but it was chaotic in its way. She reportedly had several turbulent relationships before ever meeting Michael. Angela's past relationships often mirrored patterns of emotional volatility and mistrust. While details of these marriages are not as publicized, what is known paints a picture of repeated cycles: suspicion, conflict, dominance, and eventual collapse. These patterns seem deeply rooted in Angela's unhealed emotional wounds. Issues with control, abandonment, and insecurity. Her relationship with her children, particularly her daughter Skylar, has also been tense. Angela often imposes her will on her children, believing she knows best, while demanding loyalty and obedience. Her parenting style swings between overbearing protectiveness and verbal hostility. Angela's journey into 90 Day Fiancé began when she met Michael Ilesanmi, a much younger Nigerian man. Online, the age difference, cultural gap, and differing values immediately raised red flags, but Angela pressed forward, convinced that their love could withstand the odds, or, perhaps more truthfully, determined to mold Michael into the partner she envisioned. When Angela first visited Nigeria, viewers saw a romance mirrored in power struggles. Angela often yelled at Michael, accused him of infidelity without proof, and mocked his cultural customs. Her behavior was possessive, fueled by fear of betrayal that she projected onto Michael at every turn. Despite this, Michael endured, largely out of love or, as many suspected, out of hope for a better life in America. Angela's jealousy became a central feature of the relationship. From Michael interacting with female fans or simply being on social media, everything became a threat to her control. She weaponized her insecurities to justify extreme measures, confiscating his phone, controlling his finances, and constantly threatening to end the relationship. These weren't acts of love, they were acts of domination. Over multiple seasons before the 90 Days, Happily Ever After, and The Last Resort, Angela's behavior only escalated. The relationship was no longer just emotionally toxic, it turned physically abusive. Cameras captured her screaming at Michael, throwing things, and even physically attacking him. Angela would accuse Michael of cheating, lie about her interactions with other men, and gaslight him when he questioned her behavior. One particular alarming aspect of Angela's character was her blatant double standard. She would flirt with other men, even undergo weight loss, surgeries, and cosmetic enhancements, while claiming Michael was only interested in her body. Meanwhile, Michael was expected to remain submissive, loyal, and silent. Angela's accusations of Michael's cheating became a shield for her aggression. While Michael had allegedly messaged other women early in the relationship, Angela used this incident as a lifelong justification for her lack of trust. She punished him repeatedly, emotionally, verbally, and physically. never allowing the wound to heal because keeping it open gave her power. Psychologically, Angela's behavior reflects a classic pattern of narcissistic insecurity. She required constant reassurance, thrived on being the center of attention, and responded to vulnerability with rage. Her emotional instability became a weapon once she's wielded without remorse. Angela Deem's behavior can simply be chalked up onto television drama. Her fall from grace is rooted in a toxic blend of unhealed psychological trauma and unchecked ego. Throughout her appearances on 90 Day Fiancé, Angela constantly reveals an inner world fueled by deep fear of abandonment, fear of betrayal, and ultimately fear of losing control. Instead of addressing this fear through introspection or healing, Angela weaponized it. Control became her drug. Fear and mistrust became her tools. She justified her verbal tirades, invasions of privacy, and even physical aggression as acts of love. But in truth, they were desperate bids to dominate a man she could never fully trust. What's most chilling is how she used fear not just to control Michael, but to reassure herself. In her twisted logic, if he feared her, he wouldn't leave. This created a cycle where her ego fed on obedience. Her self-worth became tied to dominance. Any resistance was an attack on her authority, and every challenge was treated like betrayal. One of the most revealing aspects of Angela Deem's toxic behavior comes from her relationship with her daughter, Skylar. During one of the infamous tell-all segments, Angela demanded something that left viewers stunned. She asked Skylar to donate her eggs so Angela could carry a child for Michael. This wasn't framed as a loving request, but as an expectation. Angela insisted that if she and Michael were to have a child, Skylar should sacrifice her body and autonomy to make it happen. Skylar understandably was taken aback. She had her own life, her children, and her health to consider. Angela's demand disregarded all of that. To her, Skylar was just a means to an end, another piece of the chessboard of control. When Skylar refused, Angela lashed out, accusing her daughter of being ungrateful and selfish. The dynamic between mother and daughter, already strained, escalated into something cruel and transactional. It was another instance of Angela's distorted perception of love, where sacrifice was one-sided and emotional blackmail was dressed up as maternal need. Skylar, like many in Angela's orbit, felt disrespected and objectified. She wasn't seen as a daughter, but as a vessel. The moment highlighted just how deeply Angela's sense of entitlement has grown and how blind she was to the emotional damage she inflicted, even on her children. From Michael's perspective, the relationship took on another layer of tragedy. On the surface, he said he loved Angela, but below that, cracks were always visible. He often looked wary, reserved, and silent in moments when Angela was yelling or making demands. He rarely pushed back. He knows the consequences. Michael complied. He agreed. He nodded. He absorbed the abuse, all because he had a goal, the K-1 spousal visa. His hope to come to America was the anchor keeping him tied to Angela. He tolerated the invasions of privacy, the destruction of his property, the insults towards his culture and masculinity, because any other path meant giving up that dream. This desperation led to deceit. Michael opened secret social media accounts, messaged other women, and created an alternate life hidden from Angela's wrath. This wasn't about cheating, it was about escape, about carving out a sliver of personal freedom in the relationship that allowed him none. His endurance wasn't a sign of love, it was survival. Her presence on social media exposed even deeper layers of hypocrisy. Angela often went live on TikTok and Instagram, singing flirtatiously with other men and behaving in ways she would never tolerate from Michael. Her online persona revealed inattention, particularly from younger black men, despite constantly accusing Michael of being unfaithful. Her infamous encounter with the black consultant during her cosmetic surgery consultations, where she flirted openly, only further highlighted the double standard. She wanted to look good for Michael, yet relished the attention from others. The more she lost physical control over aging, the more she tried to maintain emotional control over Michael. But in the process, she experienced a spiritual collapse. She no longer believed in love, only in domination. Angela's hypocrisy wasn't just cringeworthy, it was revealing. It showed a woman who had lost all boundaries between love and possession, loyalty and submission, affection and fear. Angela and Michael's final arc on 90 Day, The Last Resort, was perhaps the most emotionally intense chapter of their long toxic journey, brought together in the last-ditch effort to salvage their marriage. Angela arrived with deep-rooted trust issues and a volatile attitude. The setting designed for healing only amplified the cracks already present in their relationship. In therapy sessions with licensed counselors, Angela vocalized a desire to change. She claimed she wanted to repair what was broken between her and Michael. She often cried, speaking of betrayal and heartbreak, and painted herself as someone fighting for love. But beneath the tears was a refusal to reflect. In almost every session, instead of truly listening or accepting accountability, Angela deflected. She doubled down on her intensity, domineering every conversation with shouting, accusations, and emotional manipulation. Therapy became less about reconciliation and more about reaffirming her control. Michael, on the other hand, showed signs of wear. He was quiet, emotionally withdrawn, and seemingly resigned to whatever Angela would decide. His body language and brief statements in sessions told a silent story of years of emotional suppression. Though the therapist tried to create space for both to be heard, Angela's aggressive behavior constantly derailed any meaningful progress. She claimed she wanted healing, but healing requires letting go of control, something Angela would never do. In the happily ever after tell-all, the relationship reached a breaking point. Angela revealed she had hired a private investigator to spy on Michael. Convinced he was cheating, the investigator found no definitive evidence, but Angela used the very act of suspicion to justify her ongoing surveillance and mistrust. Michael, pushed to the edge, snapped. Years of being accused, disrespected, and treated as a second-class partner culminated in a rare moment of emotional honesty. He lashed out not in violence, but in exasperation. His face showed more than frustration. It showed a man who had endured too much for too long. Soon after news broke, Michael had disappeared from Angela's home. He had run away. For many fans, this marked the true end not just of their relationship, but of Michael's suffering. It was a quiet act of liberation, years in the making. Angela's response: not remorse, not sadness. She publicly demanded his deportation, claiming betrayal. Even in the final act of freedom, she wanted to control the consequences. Her dissent was complete not when Michael ran away, but when she didn't understand why he did. What started as a love story had become a cautionary tale, and in the end, the woman who claimed to be fighting for love had driven it away completely. Angela Deem's story is not simply one of a failed romance, it's a case study in how unhealed trauma, left unchecked, breeds tyrants. Her need for control didn't stem from strength, it stemmed from weakness, from wounds that festered into rage, and from insecurity that masqueraded as confidence. Angela Deem stands as a powerful example of how unchecked trauma, insecurity, and power can corrupt relationships beyond repair. Her descent into emotional and physical abuse wasn't sudden. It was a slow unraveling driven by fear and desperate desire to never be left behind again. Her downfall was inevitable. When fear becomes the language of love, there is no room for trust. joy, or healing. A story is a tragic one. A woman who had the chance to find love, but instead turned it into a battlefield. Her friends, her children, and her partner all became subjects in the kingdom of Angela, but kingdoms built on fear never last. And now we ask you, was Angela a product of her past, or the architect of her downfall? Did Michael endure her wrath out of love or out of survival? And in a world where trauma is often romanticized as passion, can we truly separate pain from cruelty? Comment below what you would have done in Michael's place, and how do we confront the Angelas in our own lives, those who mask tyranny as love. Because in the end, when ego is left unchallenged and pain is left untreated, even the most broken heart can become the sharpest weapon. Until next time, stay vigilant.